Hi there, welcome to this episode on Power BI tutorial video. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about data analysis expression, popularly known as DAX. Alright, what I'm going to learn in this video, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to understand the core concept of DAX, including the syntax, as well as commonly used functions. All right, what is DAX? DAX, which is known as data analysis expression, is a formula language used in Power BI, Power Pivot, SSAS to define custom calculations and expressions on data models. So it's like what Excel function is to Excel. That's what DAX is to Power BI. Why DAX? Why do you need DAX? We need DAX so that we can create custom columns and measures. So we're going to look at what columns, calculated columns and measures are in a moment. We also use this DAX to perform advanced filtering and calculation, and most importantly, it helps in dynamic aggregation, and it helps in building powerful logics in your reports. Basic DAX syntax. So a DAX formula is made up of four things. First, function name, argument enclosed in the brackets, operators for calculations, column and table references. Alright, so if you look at this total sales, this is an example of a DAX syntax. Total sales, you see sum, which is the function name. It could be average, it could be anything. And then you have sales is the table name, that's the table reference, the table you are referencing, and sales amount is the column. Now the only thing missing in this example is the argument enclosed, the operators for calculations. This is the argument enclosed in parentheses. As you can see, this is the parenthesis, this is the part, this is at the back, and so this is what we are expected to do basically. So the operators, there are no operators in this example, but in subsequent examples we'll see that. So let's talk about calculated columns versus measures. So let's go back to calculated columns. So calculated columns are calculated row by row. That means row by row. That's when you use calculated columns, when you want to make your calculations row by row. But for measures, it's calculated at the aggregation level. That means putting things together. That's what it means. We'll see the difference in a moment. Calculated columns are stored in memory. That means it creates an extra column on the table or the model basically. While measures are calculated on the fly. It's only when you need them that they are calculated basically. Although you might have written the formula down, but it's when you need to use it, that's when it begins to calculate. So not like calculated columns that once you write the formula it does the calculation, whether you're using it or whether you're not using it, it calculates it for you and create a new column and adds to the table or the model basically. Calculated columns are useful for categories and filters, while measures are basically useful for values and KPIs. So example of calculated columns. So if you see profit margin, I'm creating a new column that's called profit margin, equals to sales is the table name, profit is the column inside the sales table, divided by revenue in the sales table. So profit margin is profit divided by revenue. Now another example of measure is total revenue. This is the measure that's equals to sum and this. So commonly used DAX functions. Example, we have about 4 categories that we look at. We have aggregate functions, we have logical functions, we have time intelligence function, we have filter and calculate function. So let's talk about the aggregate functions a bit. So sum, just to sum up of range, just like you have it in Excel. Average, the same, you find the average of a range, and then mean, you find the minimum value in a range. Max, you find the maximum value in a range. Count, you count the number of occurrence of values in the range, distinct count, how many times the distinct value actually comes out. It's just like similar to unique and Excel basically. So that's what these are the functions that you can find under the aggregate function. And then you have the logical function. You have if, switch is like ifs on Excel, so like multiple if condition basically. And then you have and, you have or, you have not. So these are all functions that you can use in DAX. They're called logical functions. And then you have time intelligence function. You have total year to date, total month to date, total quarter to date, date add, and many others. You have many time intelligence functions. Then we have the filter and calculate function. So the time intelligence function, when you have to do with, when to do some calculations or manipulation that has to do with date, that's where you use the time intelligence function. And then you have the filter and calculate function. So the filter helps you to filter out some things when you're trying to do your calculation, and then the calculate function is the kind of dynamic function that helps you to do some calculation and also even adding some filter to your calculation. Basically, it's like do you want to do some operational calculation, you want to do some calculation, but then you want to do it based on a condition. So say that you want to calculate the average salaries of only male. So that means you are filtering out only male and calculating the average salary. So you have average salaries and then you have filter by the male. So that's when you use the calculate function basically. What are the best practices? Always use measures for aggregations. Use calculate with filters for complex logic. When you have complex logic, you use calculate function with filters for complex logic. One other thing you need to do is to keep your model clean and star schema'd. Like you want to use star schema, not Snowflake. Snowflake is pretty cool for traditional databases, but for Power BI, highly recommended for Power BI, star schema. Next thing is to name your measures and columns clearly. You don't want to have ambiguous measure names or column name. And the other thing is to document your logic for others to understand. So when you're writing your DAX formula, ensure that it is readable so that others can actually reproduce your analysis. So what's next? We're going to be talking about the aggregate function. Not just the aggregate function, but everything that has to do with the DAX function, from aggregate function to logical function to time intelligence function to calculate function. So we're going to be doing all of that in the next episode. Watch out. If you found this episode very helpful, kindly click the like button and hit the subscribe button so that YouTube can recommend these videos to others who are actually need them. Alright, see you in the next episode. Thank you.